In this age of AI, intelligence itself is kind of becoming a commodity. Any skill you have, it's temporary. The only real edge, the only thing that's going to last, is how fast you can learn. Okay, let's dive into this, because really understanding how to learn effectively is the key to not just surviving, but actually thriving in this new world. So this brings us to this huge paradox, right? On the one hand, yeah, AI can just give us information instantly, which could make us incredibly smart. But then on the other hand, that same instant access makes it so easy to just offload our thinking. And that can actually make us dumber. So what's really going on here? So let's start with the core problem, what I'm calling the learning paradox. And look, AI didn't invent this problem. It just cranked the volume up to 11. Think about it. For decades, the best tech has always won by making things feel easier, like GPS or autocorrect. But AI takes this to a whole new level by not just providing info, but actually thinking for us. And this convenience, it's supercharged the gap between people who learn effectively and those who don't. And this gets to a really core, kind of inconvenient truth. If learning feels easy, you're probably not actually learning. See, our brains are just hardwired to find the easy way out, which means most of us instinctively, we use AI like a crutch. There was this MIT study, and it found that when students used AI to write essays, their brain activity, their cortical activity actually went down. They were literally outsourcing the hard part, the critical thinking. And that leads to something pretty dangerous. It's a thing called cognitive atrophy. It's just like a muscle, right? If you don't use your brain's learning pathways, they get weaker. It's that simple. So when you rely on AI to do all that heavy cognitive lifting for you, it's like deciding you're never going to go to the gym again. That mental muscle you need for real, deep learning, it just starts to waste away. And if you never built that muscle in the first place, well, there's no muscle memory to even fall back on. Okay, so to fight this, we've got to understand why our brains struggle in the first place. And let me tell you, it is not about willpower. This is about pure biology. Your brain has these very real, physical limits that honestly most of our learning strategies just completely ignore. I absolutely love this analogy. Think about it. If you try to dump a gallon of theory into a little 4-ounce bowl, how much do you really think is going to stay in there? See that prefrontal cortex of yours, the part that's doing all the heavy lifting with new ideas? It is a massive energy hog. It burns up to 20% of your body's total fuel. So trying to just cram it with information, it's exactly like pouring that gallon into that tiny bowl. It's just not going to work. The failure rate is almost 100%. And this just brilliantly shows how much we misunderstand our own brains. There was this fascinating study at Carnegie Mellon. They gave one group of students material that got harder and harder. And you know what? They hated it. They felt all this friction. They felt like they were totally failing. But here's the kicker. They ended up learning twice as much as the other group, the one that had an easier time. So that feeling of struggle, that's not failure. That's what neuroscience calls the generation effect. The harder your brain has to work to generate an answer, the deeper that answer gets wired in. Okay, so the big question is, how do we create that good kind of struggle, that productive struggle, without just getting totally overwhelmed? And that brings us to the solution, a really simple 3-part playbook that kind of pulls together the best methods from the world's fastest learners. It's a system designed to work with your brain, not fight against it. All right, part 1 of the playbook is called Target. And the whole idea here is that before you even start to learn anything, you have to get absolutely ruthless about being selective. Look, the top performers, they don't try to learn everything. No way. They strategically figure out what's most important first. This is the classic 80-20 rule, right in action. For pretty much any skill you can think of, a tiny 20% of the stuff you can learn is going to give you 80% of the results. Think about learning guitar. There are thousands of chords out there, but if you just master 4 of them, just 4, you can play a massive percentage of all pop songs. The whole game is finding that crucial 20% and just ignoring everything else, at least for now. And the way top performers do this is through something called compression. So first, they select that vital 20% we just talked about. Then they use association. They connect that new idea to some pattern they already get. And finally, they chunk it all down into a really simple model or metaphor. So while most of us are getting totally overloaded with information, the top 1% are compressing it before they even try to consume it. It's a total game changer. Okay, so once you've targeted what you need to learn, part two of the playbook is all about how you engage with it. This is where you stop just passively consuming information and start actively creating something with it. You know, the tragic story of Kim Peek, the real guy who inspired the movie Rain Man, he illustrates this perfectly. This man could recall, word for word, all 12,000 books he'd ever read. It's incredible. But he really struggled with just basic day-to-day tasks. It's a powerful reminder that just hoarding information isn't learning. True mastery, that comes from doing. There's this amazing technique for this that actually comes from medical schools. It's called see one, do one, teach one. So first, you watch an expert do the thing. Then, right away, you try to do it yourself. And finally, you have to explain it to someone else. Each one of those steps forces your brain to process that same information in a totally different and way, way deeper way. Another really powerful way to engage is to stop thinking about studying and start framing your learning as a project. See, a project forces an outcome. It demands something real at the end. It needs a tangible deliverable and a hard deadline. And what does that do? It creates urgency. It gives you clear direction, and it saves you from that aimless studying where you just forget everything a week later. And that brings us to our third and final piece of the playbook. And honestly, this is the one that almost everyone skips. Consolidate. This is where you actually lock in what you've learned. And believe it or not, it is all about mastering the art of rest. So let's imagine two learners, okay? You've got the crammer, who pulls an all-nighter 10 hours in one day. Then you've got the spaced learner, who does just 1 hour a day for 10 days. So who actually learns more? Well, it's the spaced learner, and it's not even close. And here's why. There's this biological process called memory consolidation, and it happens most actively when we sleep. So our spaced learner gets 10 nights of that deep learning process. The crammer, they only get 1. And this doesn't just work over days, it works on a micro level too. Your brain, it turns out, operates in these 90-minute cycles. They're called ultradian cycles. So after about 90 minutes of really deep work, your brain needs about 20 minutes of real rest. But what's even crazier is that research shows that if you take tiny 10-second pauses during that 90 minutes, your brain replays the information you just learned at 20 times the normal speed. You're literally getting free practice reps just by pausing for a few seconds. How cool is that? You know, in our culture that's just obsessed with productivity, we've totally forgotten what farmers have known for centuries. You can't just keep plowing the same field every single day of the year. The soil, it has to rest to get its fertility back. Rest isn't laziness. It's an absolutely non-negotiable part of growth. And your brain, it is no different. So when you put all this together, you target, you engage, and you consolidate, what you're doing is building an incredibly powerful system for learning. And this isn't just some nice-to-have skill. In the age of AI, this is your unfair advantage. So this brings us right back to that central question. How are you going to use this new technology? Because you really have two choices. You can use AI as a crutch, offload your thinking, become dependent on it, or you can use it as a coach, a really powerful sparring partner that helps you gather info and check your own answers. But the key, the absolute non-negotiable part is that you, and only you, have to do the hard work of actually encoding that information deep into your long-term memory. Ultimately, this whole conversation really just shifts the focus, doesn't it? It stops being about being afraid of what AI can do or what jobs it's going to take. The only question that really truly matters is this. What are you going to do to strengthen the single most powerful tool you will ever have? Because at the end of the day, that is the one advantage that can never, ever be taken away from you.